a hand. Who here believes we have a responsibility to stop the flow of weapons to the genocidal Zionist project? Who here is committed to working on an arms embargo campaign? Our next panel, No Weapons for Genocide, the people demand an arms embargo, will focus on the campaigns that are imperative to stop this genocide. Before passing it on to our panelists, we'll be watching a video that reflects on the last year's work, commitments, and the campaigns for arms embargo. Thank you.
People have been picketing and protesting individual weapons companies, but now is the time for organized, targeted campaigns. We will be hitting empire where it hurts most, so we invite you all to join us in this campaign.
Will you join us in this next era as we knock down Titan one by one by one? Starting with first!
The result of our disruption of yesterday's event, First has decided to cancel today's planned public tours of their new shipping vessel, and the ship has left the port altogether.
Today, we demonstrate that Maersk is everywhere, and so are we.
We're currently outside Maersk, one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, that only the last year, has shipped thousands of tons of military equipment to Israel to arm them during their genocide in Gaza.
We realized that we actually needed to take matters into our own hands and actually enact a people's arms embargo.
Spain refused to allow an Israel-bound vessel to dock at its Cartagena port.
Ante esta realidad, no vamos a mirar hacia otro lado. Nuestro deber moral es actuar, algo esencial para frenar sus actividades y para que Europa deje de ser cómplice de este genocidio. Hemos trabajado junto al Palestinian Young Movement para impedir que los barcos cargados de armas con destino a Israel puedan atracar en puertos españoles. Este embargo de armas que España va a aprobar debe de ser un faro y una herramienta que ilumine el camino de otros países.
A new report has revealed for the first time the scale of UK arms exports to Israel.
There has been one clear and urgent demand for the Canadian government to impose a comprehensive two-way arms embargo on Israel.
في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وفي العالم أجمع. آن الأوان للوقوف صفا واحدا في وجه آلة الموت والدمار، وأن نقول بلا تردد لا للإبادة، لا للمجازر، لا للتجويع.
Defending human rights is the basis for defending trade union rights, and we will keep fighting to protect Palestinian civilians in Gaza and elsewhere.
Siamo che opporci a tutte le politiche di guerra che esportano massacri nel mondo.
Hello, everyone. Yes, hello, it's our first day together, let's go! My name is Iman Abed, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Organizing with the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. We have gathered here for our love of our people, for our desire for freedom, and our belief in a Palestinian tomorrow. But today we have also gathered in grief and anger, in a sorrow that demands collective action as we have all witnessed such unimaginable and unfathomable atrocities. We've scrolled on our screens hour by hour as we've witnessed the live-streamed genocide of our families and friends across Gaza. Each one of us has experienced this moment differently, but we know there is something profoundly important in reconnecting. For me, when I was on this stage last year, I was pregnant with my first child. Today, my son Wa'il is walking around this conference hall, 13 months old, born into this genocide of his people. We named him Wa'il after Wa'il Dahdouh, Al Jazeera's bureau chief in Gaza, who was a living symbol of Samud. The intensity of this moment has tested our tactics and ability to respond to the unprecedented scale of suffering. One thing is clear: wherever we are, it is our responsibility to expose the contradictions and complicity of our institutions in the oppression of our people. For years, we have been advocating for an end to the flow of weapons to Israel, well aware that the unconditional military aid, funding, and weapons transfers has fueled the ongoing ethnic cleansing of our people by the Zionist state and beyond. While governments across the world have failed to meet the moment, the people have risen. The connections to killing are clearer than ever, and ordinary people across the globe are putting their bodies and livelihood on the line to stop the transfer of weapons to the genocidal Zionist regime. We have seen thousands across the globe mobilize on the streets to physically block the bombs. From Virginia to Morocco, people have taken the necessary risks to meet the moment and to disrupt the flow of weapons. What we have known for decades is becoming irrefutable to the public consciousness. Here in the US, over 61% of American voters oppose the transfer of weapons to Israel, highlighting, you can clap for that. It highlights the dissonance between the people and those in power. And while those in power have failed us, we must not fail to hold them to account. As frustrating as it may be, we must continue to put pressure on our elected officials and international institutions to end this slaughter. We are witnessing an important shift. The pressure on members of Congress, for instance, has resulted in a record number of co-sponsors and sign-ons to a pro-Palestinian bill, the Block the Bombs bill, even gaining support from members of Congress who have previously accepted pro-Israel AIPAC dollars. This bill would stop the transfer of offensive weapons to Israel. The momentum in our movement is growing, and we each have a way to contribute to our shared struggle for liberation. My hope today for all of you is to walk away with three things. One, the understanding of what role we all must play in this arms embargo work. The second, what strategies are working and how do we continue making them work? And the third, identifying where you would like to plug in. Because as the masses in these areas grow, our contributions move us that much closer towards the flow of weapons being used on our people. I am so excited to introduce you all to our following panelists who have played such prominent roles in their work. First, I want to welcome Aisha Nizar. Aisha is an organizer. Woo! I'm still going to introduce her. Aisha is an organizer with the Palestinian Youth Movement and sits on the steering committee of the Mask Off Mirrors campaign, and she is based in Oakland, California. Next, I have Sachin Padada. Sachin, woo! Sachin is the research coordinator of the Progressive International. His work supports state governments, factory and maritime workers, and civil society organizations around the world seeking to intervene in the supply chains and transport routes of military cargo shipments to the Zionist entity. Sachin is also a PhD student in economics in the University of Massachusetts and Amherst, where his research focuses on the political economy of ecological justice and sovereign development. And last but certainly not least, we will be joined by Ismail Laghouzi, who was born in Casablanca, Morocco. He'll be zooming us all the way out from Morocco. passionate in agriculture and farming, Ismail pursued studies in agriculture in Rabat at Hassan II Agronomic and Veterinary Institute. Currently employed at Totary Resource Recycling Morocco as branch manager, Ismail has been raised by his parents who love Palestine, who have witnessed the Second Intifada and have become aware of the Palestinian struggle against the apartheid regime, and has been supporting the Palestinian cause ever since. It is the genocide in Gaza that was led by the Zionist occupation, coupled with the defeating silence of decision makers and complicity of many a country that got Ismail to criticize, and to realize, rather, no time to stay idle and watch from the sidelines. We're deeply fortunate to be welcomed with Ismail's presence here today. So, my first question is going to be for you, Aisha. Almost exactly 1 year ago, at the First People's Conference for Palestine, the Palestinian Youth Movement launched the Mask Off Maersk campaign. From workers refusing to handle weapons in French ports to popular mobilizations in North Africa, we have seen many sectors of society organized to confront the supply chain of genocide. Do you mind sharing first why you all chose Maersk, and what has the campaign clarified in regards to the usually hidden system behind the arms trade?
Is this on? Yeah. Thank you, Iben. Welcome, everyone. I want to first start off by saying that, we launched this campaign a year ago at the People's Conference. And I am so honored to be up here with Sachin and Ismail, who have played such a pivotal role in this campaign, who have sacrificed so much of their life for this struggle. So I just want to start out by welcoming them into this space, because it really is a coming home moment for me to be up here with you all. Okay, so to answer your question, what has this campaign clarified for us about the arms trade? I think what Mask Off Maersk really did for the movement was it illuminated that the shipping and logistics industry is really the primary vehicle that sustains the arms trade. $19 billion in military aid goes to Israel. That's just since this genocide has started. And that doesn't come from nowhere at all. It's coming from the United States, and it has to be physically transported to the Zionist entity. So what we learned from this is that because of the way that capitalism has developed through the past 50 years, the weapons industry is really the private sector of the military-industrial complex. And because it's a privatized sector, it needs to use privatized shipping companies to be able to transport the weapons to the Zionist entity. And so really, commercial shipping companies should be a primary target for us to be taking up. When we thought about the logic behind the campaign, we thought about all of the different types of weapons manufacturers that we could target directly. And we were analyzing all of the different campaigns that we saw across the world, and we realized that there's a varying degree of success rates when you target a weapons manufacturer. And we needed to direct the movement to a single target that would illuminate what are the veins of imperialism, what teaches us a larger political message around how we struggle for our liberation. And so we, instead of taking on a weapons manufacturer directly, we said, let's actually go at the veins in which are carrying these weapons across. This allows us to be able to target them through a multitude of avenues. So what we learned is that Maersk is actually using civilian infrastructure to transfer weapons. And that's a contradiction in and of itself, because, we don't want our civilian infrastructures to be carrying militarized cargo, let alone do we want our civilian infrastructure to be facilitating genocide. Nobody consented to that. So it's a contradiction in and of itself, but it's also an opportunity, because the masses are with Palestine. And the masses do not want to be complicit in this genocide. And if they're going to use our civilian infrastructure, then what that does is provide an opportunity for everyday people to intervene in the supply chain of death. decided why Maersk, we were looking at this thing called the Maritime Security Program. The Maritime Security Program was established during Operation Desert Storm. And it was established because the United States was physically incapable of transferring the amount of weapons that they needed to conduct the genocides that they were in the Middle East at that time through their naval fleet. So they had to outfit commercial shipping companies' ships to be able to carry this militarized cargo. And this is kind of the historical roots that we're talking about when we talk about a people's arms embargo. And through that, when we're looking at the Maritime Security Program, we can see that Maersk makes up more than 50% of the fleet. So it's not rocket science, y'all. Like, it's like you can put one and one together and say, okay, obviously the United States is sending $19 billion worth of military aid over to the Zionist entity. We know that they have this maritime security program that was established to do so. Maersk makes up over 50% of this fleet. Yani, it's one and one. We got it. We know Maersk is a target. We know that they're embedded, and we know that they're profiting off of our genocide, and they're profiting big off of our genocide. But even when we announced Maersk, we were met with a multitude of questions. One specific question that we heard over and over again was, why Maersk? Because Maersk doesn't ship weapons, Maersk ships weapons components. It doesn't make sense to us, obviously, to everybody in this crowd, because a weapons component is going to be made into a weapon. And if you're shipping the bullet casing, if you're shipping the bullet shell, if you're shipping the bullet core, you're shipping a bullet. But the arms trade is intentionally complicated because it makes it harder to intervene. And so they specifically do this, and there's also many other reasons. I should also say that, you know, if you're shipping a weapon, then it's a dangerous good. And if it's a dangerous good, then you have to pay your workers the rate that they deserve to be handling a dangerous good. So it's also profitable for them on multiple levels to make sure that they're shipping the weapons components rather than the weapons themselves. And so really what we learned was that we actually need to start identifying what these supply chains are, how they function, how our infrastructure is complicit in this, and illuminate a larger system that provides us an avenue to materially stop this genocide from everyday workers. There's a couple different ways that commercial shipping companies participate in the arms trade. I already talked about, you know, the Maritime Security Program. They also have these things that are like weapons depots that they house all of the different weapons in that they then transfer to, you know, Israel, whether that's coming from the DLA warehouse outside of the Bay Area or the Interglobal Forwarding Services, which is outside of New Jersey. But they also participate in very vulnerable supply chains. And I want to talk about the F-35 supply chain because I think that this is something that is so critical for the movement to understand if we actually want to intervene. So the F-35 supply chain, or the F-30, let's start with what's the F-35. The F-35 is considered the crown jewel of the weapons for the Israeli occupation. It's a jet that can carry an 18,000 pound of munition. It can drop those bunker buster bombs that we've heard about, those 20,000 pound bombs. And it cost them $100 million per jet to create this jet. The entire F-35 program is $2 trillion. But the interesting part about this is that 70% of the cost of the F-35 program actually comes from the supply chain. 70% of this $2 trillion that goes into the supply chain is literally because they need to transport the different components of the F-35 to different locations to assemble them. And what's really important for us to know is that the F-35 supply chain functions off of this just-in-time logistics process. It's called this It's an inventory management system, and it's called just in time, which means that it delivers the goods right before they're needed. And it's also noted that for an F-35, for every 1 hour of flight, it actually needs 3 hours of maintenance. So what I'm saying to y'all is that if one specific node of the F-35 supply chain is intervened in, it has a huge impact on our people back home. And so we've really developed a methodology, and then I hope that we can get into this and we can talk about it a bit more through this panel. But what's important for us to know here is that the more that we know, the more that we can do. Knowledge is really power here. And we need to be surgical, we need to be strategic, and we need to be bold in our actions. Because there are many different points of these supply chains of death that we can intervene in, and we must intervene in. And we can tangibly stop the genocide.
I don't know how someone can actually provide all that information in 10 minutes, but Aisha just did it, and I hope that you all walk away feeling like you just know that much more. That was incredible. Thank you, Aisha. We're going to move on to you, Sachin. Sachin, you're a part of Progressive International, an organization that houses hundreds of progressive groups and forces across the world. The PI convened the Hague Group, a group of countries from the global south that have pledged to protect and uphold the rulings of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. A few months ago, the group prepared an emergency convention in Bogota, Colombia, which culminated in 12 countries implementing recommendations of that Hague Group. Woo! Yeah. And we've also seen just how you've used this inside-outside strategy with your No Harbor for Genocide campaign. Indeed, we are seeing more and more state actors move towards taking concrete actions against Israel. Can you speak more to the relationship between grassroots organizing and diplomacy on a state level?
Is this thing on? Yep. Hi, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be speaking here with these amazing panelists, this amazing moderator, and in front of this amazing audience. My name is Sachin. I am the research coordinator of the Progressive International, which, for those of you who don't know, the Progressive International, or the PI as we fondly call it, is a coalition of well over 100 political parties and trade unions and social movements all over the world who, simply put, seek to dismantle the systems of capitalism and imperialism that are destroying the planet and subjecting the masses of the world to untold cruelty for the sake of profit. We seek to put an end to that, and to us, what has been happening in Gaza for the past almost 2 years is the clearest illustration of the depravity of the system that we are trying to get rid of. There is not a clearer example of the harm that comes from violence for profit. And this violence is obviously upheld by the country that we are currently in, which is the United States. As the largest military, economic, diplomatic backer of the Zionist state of Israel. The US has functionally for decades been the sole superpower of the world, dominating all corners of the planet with an agenda that is driven primarily by the accumulation of profit at the expense of human lives. And this has been very clear in recent years especially, and especially since October 7th. I think we can all say with certainty that the US is the most complicit country. Complicit is not even the word to use, but the most responsible country as a state for what has been happening not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and also all over the global South. I say all this because I think it's important to name that we live in a world that is controlled by the system of empire and injustice. I think to obfuscate that point or beat around the bush there does not serve us. We live in an evil country, and that's just what's happening. And that doesn't mean we're all evil, but it does mean that we have a unique responsibility. We have a unique position here in the heart of the empire to act in solidarity with all of our siblings in Gaza, in the West Bank, all around the world. And I guess to start getting to the question, I think that it's important to name, right, that we do live in the system of imperialism that has conquered every corner of the world functionally. There are several exceptions that are worth upholding and highlighting and celebrating, but by and large, imperialism is a system that is global. And it is not without its contradictions. It is not without its points of conflict. It's not without the violence that it relies on and is sustained by. And these contradictions, like Aisha said, are opportunities at every level, whether it's local, whether it's national, whether it's international. There are contradictions that can and should be exploited. So one, I think, clear contradiction is that of colonialism or imperialism. We continue to live in a world that is defined by immense inequality between the global north, the US, Canada, Europe, and the global south, which is Asia, Africa, Latin America, broadly speaking. The decolonization, the UN will say decolonization ended in the 60s. It's still ongoing. It's still happening. And I think it's important to name that this process is not easy, and it's not without its contradictions as well. But the task of decolonization is just as urgent today as it was 50 years ago, and I think it's also important to name that. So in this world where the masses of the world are subjected to this horrible system of capitalism and imperialism, and entire states across the global south are not allowed to pursue sovereign development or self-determination because those things go against the interests of the empire, we continue to experience inequality all over the world every minute of every day. And we have seen since October 7th that states of the global south have really drawn on their history and current sort of situations battling colonialism and imperialism to stand in solidarity with Palestine so firmly, even while the cowards of the global north continue to send arms to Israel uncritically, continue to leverage all these bogus talking points, for lack of a better way of putting it, to justify the genocide that we're watching before our eyes. And it is almost exclusively global south states that have at all stepped up against the genocide. And I think one clear example is South Africa launching its ICJ case against Israel at the start of 2024. And there are several other examples that are worth mentioning. Colombia in 2024 vowed to block all coal exports to Israel as a leading coal supplier of Israel. Without coal, the Israeli military cannot operate in the way that it does. In Malaysia, all arms shipments, there was an arms embargo declared also in 2024. And these are all successes. These are all things that we must celebrate and must acknowledge as wins. And so drawing upon these wins, we realized that the most effective weapon against empire is solidarity and collective action. And so we look at Colombia, we look at South Africa, we look at Malaysia, and we say there are lessons from each of these examples that we can point to that other states should be following, that everybody should be signing on to South Africa's ICJ case. Every state should be blocking coal and oil exports to Israel. Every state should be having a total arms embargo against Israel. These things they should be collectivized, they should spread. And so that's exactly what we sought to do with the Hague Group, which is a diplomatic bloc of over a dozen states across the global south that have pledged very concretely in concrete terms to block all exports of arms and fuel from their ports and factories to the Zionist entity. In January 2025, the Hague Group was founded, and in Bogota a month and a half ago, we just had this incredible conference which expanded the Hague Group, both in terms of the number of states that are participating and the demands that they're taking up into their own hands at the highest levels of policy in each of these states. It is crucial to mention at this point that these demands are rooted first and foremost in the grassroots movement. All these demands for an arms embargo, the first people that have been sounding the alarm on this have been grassroots movement. the people, regular people of the world, are the most able to call out injustice for what it is, because we are not wedded to these systems that oppress us, and we are instead invested in the destruction of these systems that oppress us. And I think the same thing can be said of states that are continuing to suffer and struggle against neocolonialism and imperialism, where they see the solidarity with Palestine because it is one struggle and we are all part of it. And it's worth mentioning the Mask Off Maersk campaign and the Palestinian Youth Movement, and they're fantastic, applause for them. They have been among a coalition of a handful of organizations that have been really doing this hard work of diplomacy behind the scenes with the Hague Group and with states that are not in the Hague Group to actually push concrete policy that has had material impact on these supply chains. And I think that lesson of collaborating and taking inspiration from social movements and elevating the demands to a point that states cannot ignore them, and they see that the right thing to do is what needs to be done, which is a total arms embargo. And we work towards that, and we are seeing victories that are coming largely from the impetus of social movements and organized labor that are really putting things at risk in their acts of solidarity. And I think that gives a lot of confidence to states of the Global South that the people have their back, and that they are doing what is right for the people of Palestine. And so I guess, like, with that, I'll say that there's a couple of, I think, things that are worth mentioning with regards to the contradictions aspect. One is that obviously, at the global level, we live in a world of contradictions. There's imperialism and colonialism. There's inequality between states, and that has, very effectively been exploited by our work with the Hague Group, exploited in a good way, to say that, like, we are able to point to the injustices in the world and actually spur action out of them. But I think that also these contradictions pop up in our movements, and it's something that we have to wrestle with constantly. And I think in general, the thing that I keep coming back to is this Audre Lorde quote of the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And I think we really have to be thinking constantly about the ways in which the empire in which we all live, in which we are all right now, ingrains its psychology into our brains and makes us think differently about the kinds of things that we can and need to be doing. And I think that it's on us to be challenging those internalized logics that ultimately only serve to defang and weaken our movement, and to instead actually fight against that and to resist. Resistance is not simply putting out a joint letter or standing with a sign at the street, and voicing your opposition. I think resistance is more than ideas, it is action. And that's what we've seen consistently, is that the most effective resistance to Zionism, to imperialism, to injustice writ large has been action. It hasn't been words necessarily. It has been the concrete action, whether it's of states, labor unions, social movements, regular people. The biggest thing that threatens the empire and its hegemony over the world and its stranglehold on the rest of us is, like I said, collective action. That second word is important there, right? It's not just about collective statements. It's not just about all holding the same line. It's about actually acting in a bold, strategic way that acknowledges the stakes of the situation we're in. And so, yes, like South Africa after their ICJ case has continued to be on the receiving end of a ridiculous campaign by the US and its allies in the global north to try to destabilize what they're doing and try to throw them off kilter, and it's not working. And I think that's worth noting. The Mask Off Maersk campaign, has not been without challenges from the system that we exist in. And every time the campaign fights back and doubles down, it only shows how strong the movement is. I'm also reminded of Palestine Action in the UK, who for years and years have been sounding the alarm on these supply chains and actually taking direct action in a way that puts their comfort that is at the expense of the rest of the world at risk. There's currently a Palestine Action UK prisoner, behind bars right now in the UK, who is on day 17 of a hunger strike. Her name is Tihosha, and she's in prison because of a direct action that led to £1 million in financial losses by Elbit Systems. That is huge. And the only reason she is in prison is because those actions work. They show the empire that it is not invincible, that it is not infallible, that there are ways that we can attack it and actually make our attacks land. And so I guess the thing that I want to end with here is just to say that when we are confronted with injustice like this, we could either try to keep within the toolbox of the empire, the toolbox of the master, and fail to dismantle the house, or we could get creative and build our own tools. And we can actually see how those tools are effective, or whether they're effective, based on how the empire responds to us. If we are doing things correctly, we should be expecting repression. We should be expecting the empire to fight back, because that's what they do. Power concedes nothing without a fight. That doesn't mean we don't fight. It means we fight knowing what we're fighting for and what we're fighting with.
We're having some Zoom difficulties with getting Ismail on, but hopefully we'll be working on that very shortly. I think something that both of you have been talking about is the rooms and the opportunities for where people can be getting more involved. And so just a question to both of you regarding where can people get more involved on collective action in each of the areas that you both have been speaking to?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts in case you guys couldn't tell. I think the first thing is recognizing like I said, the stakes of this struggle are nothing short of existential, not just for the people of Gaza, but for all over the world. We know Israel is the pioneer of a lot of technologies that are then exported all around the world to enact oppression over everyone. At our border with Mexico is an example. Elbit Systems, test things in occupied Palestine to then use at the US border with Mexico. I think the reason I say this is that it's important to recognize that solidarity has a material basis. There's a reason for it. It's not just, it's not charity. Solidarity is not charity. Solidarity is not me holding on to my comfort and saying, I feel bad for these people, I'm gonna do whatever I can to help them, but also maintain my personal comfort and privilege above all else. That's not solidarity, that's charity, and that doesn't work. We have to understand that people all over the world are taking massive risks. States are taking massive risks, like Spain, who enacted an arms embargo against Israel, or declared an arms embargo against Israel, and has since been dealing with all kinds of fallout, both from the right wing within the country and also from the US and its allies, and NATO especially. South Africa with the ICJ case, the Hague Group country, I could go on. This also happens at the individual level, though. We, especially Ismail, who hopefully can join us soon, can speak to this as well, the individual costs that we incur as a price to pay for caring about humanity, about caring about our siblings all over the world. And I think it's important for us to question our risk assessment, especially knowing that the empire seeds its logic into our own heads. We have to be constantly asking ourselves, is what I am doing putting enough at stake in a strategic enough way that will actually enact change that I want to see? And that change does not usually happen in one-off events. It happens as a long, grueling, protracted process of building a new world for us to live in. So to get more at the question, I think I'm reminded of this Bassel al-Araj quote, where he basically says that the average American will never understand the plight of the Palestinian person because the state of Israel is a carbon copy of the United States. And therefore, the thing to do is to destroy the idea of America in Americans' heads so that they can see the humanity of everybody outside of the warping of American exceptionalism and imperialism and all these evil things. We have to dismantle this idea of American exceptionalism, of supremacy, of being beyond reproach. I think it's very important that we normalize criticism as a healthy process and learn from our experiments in the world to push the boundaries of what is possible, to continue to fight for more and more, and to see how the empire responds to us and to continue to push farther and harder. The other thing I'll mention, which is I think relevant for us here, is that we know the US is the largest arms supplier to the Zionist entity. And all of its arms that it sends to the Zionist entity are made in-house in the US by US workers at US corporations on US land, which is stolen, using our tax dollars. And we all know, right, like Raytheon and Elbit are evil, but I think that what's less obvious is all the supply chains that make up, right, like Aisha said, there are components that are being assembled into the whole. Those components are made by random companies you've never heard of that just exist somewhere, that are free to do whatever they are doing, and they have much thinner profit margins than Raytheon or Elbit, and they're much more, those contradictions are much more exploitable. And so I think, again, thinking creatively, mapping out these supply chains, and actually looking at what points of intervention are most strategic from a variety of lenses.
Ismail has jumped on and off. I'm so sorry, everyone. We're just getting the Zoom figured out here as best as we can. So once he joins on, we'll just have him jump right into the conversation. Aisha, I know that, again, we offered the question. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I would love to. And I think that, this is, I'm sure, a lot of information that we're bestowing upon you all right now. And honestly, sometimes me and Sachin, we were even joking about this before we came on, we can get so in the weeds because we're so deep in the research and tangibly understanding these supply chains. And so I want to zoom us out and actually provide a methodology that we've seen be really effective for enacting a people's arms embargo. So there are really 4 main components that has led us to be able to enact material change. 1, you need to have grassroots organizations. Organizations that are embedded in the masses, that are base building organizations, that have a pulse on their community and understand where there are levers that they are able to pull on to be able to enact change. 2, you need research. You need folks who understand the supply chains, or you need to know how you can get that research so you can actually demand change and you can say, don't run away from this. I'm not just telling you that we need an arms embargo. I'm telling you we need an arms embargo because my workplace is complicit in XYZ reason, in XYZ way. You need, hopefully, labor. Organized unions, labor unions, are able to strike, are able to enact change in a way that we might not be able to from the outside. And if you're lucky, you got a progressive elected official that's actually able to hear your demands and forward them with whatever capacity that may be. These 4 components have been able to interact with each other to be able to stop the flow of weapons, and I want to give a couple examples of how that looks, because it's not always linear. You don't need to have all 4 of the components, and it doesn't necessarily start with 1 and end with number 4. It can sometimes move in different ways, and you should understand your locale, and I would love for you to get plugged into this campaign, and so we can talk about ways for you guys to do that. But those 4 components interact with each other differently, and I want to give some examples about that. So when we first launched this campaign, we wanted to detail how Maersk was complicit in the genocide. And we were able to quickly release our first report that detailed that Maersk had shipped millions of pounds of military cargo to the Zionist entity. Thousands of shipments, y'all. And what's crazier about this is, as we were documenting this, we were also able to see that Maersk had violated Spain's arms embargo over 900 times. 900 times Maersk had shipped military cargo through the Alcaceres port without Spain's knowledge. Shame. So we documented this and we publicized this, and Spain was obviously livid. It's an embarrassment to them. They're sticking their neck out and they're doing all of this for the Palestinian people, and there's commercial shipping companies who are evading any sort of accountability and evading, violating their sovereignty as a country to make a pretty penny. And so when we had 3 more ships that were approaching Spain, that were a part of the maritime security program, Spain responded, and they responded quickly and they responded strongly. And they blocked all 3 of those ships. So what happened after that? Those ships are now running throughout the Mediterranean because they're like, where do we go? They now have a target on their back because the whole world knows that these ships are carrying military cargo. And Maersk is obviously pissed because up until this moment, they've been denying that they ship military cargo. Their whole line, we don't ship weapons, we don't ship munition. Well, you're shipping the weapons components, buddy, and we can see it, and now everybody can see it because Spain is holding you accountable for it. So, el-muhim, the ships are all around, they're running around the Mediterranean, and they end up going to Morocco. It's at this point that we have Moroccan grassroots organizers who organize massive demonstrations in the streets. We have hundreds of thousands of Moroccans in the streets going against these Maersk ships. From that popular protest, we see unions all across Morocco start writing statements, public statements, condemning the cargo that's in their ports. And from this popular pressure, we then have the workers who are at Tangier Medport 2, who then go to strike the ship. In the first shift, 17 of the 20 crane operators were striking. In the second shift, it was 27 out of the 30 who were striking. And in a country that's normalizing, y'all, that's not a small thing to say. Like, that shows that the masses are with Palestine and the Arab people are willing to risk it all to stand on the right side of history and oppose this genocide. And this resulted in the delay of these F-35 maintenance components. And y'all remember what I told you about the F-35 supply chain. And these were maintenance components. It resulted in their delay of over a week. And honestly, there were some containers that ended up in India and some random places that really we have some questions about how long, but up to 2 months it was delayed. So you see, in this situation, we had grassroots organizers, we had researchers, and we had progressive elected officials, but this actually started with, like, the campaign really took off with some progressive, states like Spain who were able to stick their neck out for the first time. What does this look like, though, for us in the United States, in the imperial core, as Sachin was saying, with honestly more responsibility than arguably anybody else in the world, because we are the primary facilitators of this genocide? So, yesterday, Oakland, the Bay Area, us, PYM Bay Area, AROC, the Arab Research and Organizing Center, and USPCN announced a campaign to have the first citywide arms embargo campaign to actually stop the flow of weapons leaving the city of Oakland. And this started with research. We were able to reveal that there were over 280 military cargo shipments that left the Oakland airport for the Nevatim Air Base just since January of 2025. This is a city that was one of the first cities that called for a ceasefire. This is a city that has the only ILWU Local 10, the only longshore union that has enacted an arms embargo in the United States. They are based in Oakland. So Oakland stands for progressive values. Oakland stands with Palestine. There ain't no question about that. So the fact that we were able to document this and to expose this actually produces an opportunity for us to heighten the contradictions and set a precedent for the rest of the country to follow. And that's what we're inviting you all to do here today. We're inviting you to get plugged into this campaign. We have sign-up sheets on the PYM table, on the Mask Off Burst table. You can come, you can see our research report that details also over 29 cities that are a part of this supply chain that are sending weapons to the Zionist entity. So y'all are questioning, oh, is my city complicit in this? Well, we probably have it for you. So get plugged in, sign up, learn what is happening in your locale, and demand an arms embargo. Go home and put it to your city council, to your port authority, and say, we know this is happening in our locale, and we know that our people do not stand for it. Especially y'all who have cities that voted in a ceasefire, that voted in a resolution for a ceasefire. You have an opportunity to advance that ideological commitment to something that's material. And like Sachin was saying, we need action right now. We need action for our people back home. Okay, yeah.
So Ismail has finally joined us, which is awesome. Ismail, let us know if we can, I don't know if we can see him. But it's a pleasure to have you here with us all the way out from Morocco. Ismail, again, we've been talking about the different angles and the different strategies that have been used here for Mask Off Maersk with the Hague Group. And we're really excited to learn more about the work you've been doing in Morocco. So in contrast to the state-level efforts, we have also seen organizing from below. And Aisha, you were just talking a lot about the role of workers in these different campaigns. Ismail, in your native Morocco especially, we've seen an incredible surge of popular mobilizations in response to the military cargo destined to Israel being docked in Moroccan ports. And in fact, Ismail, in December 2024, you were imprisoned for the role you played in the mass demonstrations against Maersk ships carrying military cargo to Israel. What, in your opinion, is the role of workers and everyday people? And what about in the context of the Arab world?
Thank you so much. Let me first start by saying I'm really sorry about being in and out of this wonderful gathering, and I am honored to be part of this event. And really, it's too bad that I couldn't make it there because it's happening in Anas Sharif Hall, which is really a good, how can I say, rendition to a great person that said, he said in his last will, don't let the chains silence you, and don't let the borders stop you. And we are now, how can I say, doing right by gathering here. The borders are not stopping us. We are all in the same action, doing the same thing. And to get back to your question about the context, I believe Aisha said a lot of things. And the context in Morocco is that although we are living in a country that is connected to Palestine through history ties, through blood ties, through a lot of, how can I say, struggles together, we have been facing the normalizing accords since 2020, and since then we have been struggling ever since with the Zionist entity getting, how can I say, getting into our businesses, getting into our politics, getting into our economy, and lately we have been actually complicit with delivering weapons and delivering military equipment to the Zionist entity. And as Aisha said, it came from after the Spanish government stopped the ships. Now it's coming to us going through the Moroccan ports. And honestly, Sachin said that the American feel that they are living in an evil country. In Morocco, we are saying now that we are living in a country knee-deep in double standards. Because at the same time, when the Muslim and Arab summit was taking place, and the Moroccan representative was saying that we are doing our best to have peace in Palestine and to help our the people over there. At the same time, the exact same day, a ship was going out of the Moroccan, the Tangier port, delivering military equipment to the Zionist entity. It feels so wrong that we are so now involved, not involved, but attracted to making money And in this imperialist, how can I say, regime, imperialist oppression, that we don't care moral values anymore. Even although we are breaking now, the Moroccan government doing this is breaking several regulations and is contradicting its own resolutions, being a UN member, and also signing a UN letter calling for an arms embargo on Israel back in November 2024. It really is a shame, and we have a say as people. Don't want to be involved in war crimes. We don't want to be involved or complicit on a genocide in our brethren in Gaza. So we said no, and we took it to the streets. And this is with the help with grassroots movement. I myself am involved and active member of the BDS movement in Morocco. And with the help of PYM, we are connected with getting the information and then doing something with it. And that something is calling upon, how can I say, member of associations and the lawyers and the politicians to put the pressure and make it known that now the government is involved or complicit in genocide by doing so, and calling on dock workers, Moroccan dock workers, to have a say in that, because we are calling them as the front line or the first line of defense, because they can do something. The country is its own people, its own. The people have a say in this, and the arms embargo is a really strong weapon, and we have a say, we have a will. And honestly, we were so proud when we noticed that the shipments were delayed. Sometimes it was by 40 hours, sometimes 12 hours. And later on, we heard that a lot of dock workers boycotted or said, we won't work these ships, because they saw things with their own eyes. They saw military equipments that they see on the TV arresting innocent people or killing and murdering innocent people. And it didn't stand right with them. And so I believe on the ground, we are doing what we can, but we are still short on especially the political kind of approach. I believe we need to approach more politicians, more decision makers, so that they can stand for what's right. If not now, then when? And so, can I say, in order to give numbers, when we say that Morocco have been delivering military equipment, it's not stopping there. We are now going from normalizing as a treason to the Palestinian people. Now it's becoming a crime, because we saw that after the normalization, things accelerated, and we have articles depicting that Morocco now, or the Moroccan government, is going to or get weapons and arms and equipment from the Zionist entity. Procured 2 sites for $1 billion. It procured artillery equipment for $200 million. And I believe it installed, or it's going to install drone factories for the Elbit systems, which is and Bluebird, so two Israeli companies. I believe that it's not completely gloomy, but with the help of the people, with the help of grassroots movements, and with the help of abroad associations and abroad movements, we can grow stronger. And honestly, we felt so, how can I say, it was heartwarming seeing other members of other grassroots movements saluting Moroccan dock workers. And I myself, I salute other dock workers in the Mediterranean area, Greece and Italy and Turkey and other, I believe I'm forgetting others, because it has been growing so, it has been going so well and so quick that we cannot calculate it anymore. And yeah, and thank you for this opportunity. And yeah, let's keep on the pressure. And I really got goosebumps from the intro video. seeing the Casablanca protests being shown. It happened again in Casablanca and in Tangier, which is like 400 kilometers away from Casablanca.
I hope Ismail gets a chance to see this room and the thousands of you who are here today to support people like Ismail, of whom have risked their lives for Palestinians, and continue to show up even long after incarceration to be able to showcase and expose the truth that people in elected offices across the globe are trying to keep from us. And so I just want to thank you, Ismail, and to everyone else across Morocco of whom has shown solidarity. And my hope is actually, while we still have you, my hope is the connection is still good. I wanted to actually send off a second question to you, Ismail. Would you mind sharing, I think you touched a little bit about this, but we would love to know more around what some of the most effective strategies in targeting the weapons supply chain to Israel have looked like? And I just want to also add from your angle as well, what can we do here in the West to support the people of Morocco?
I believe this movement or this approach, this campaign is new here in Morocco. I think we started in November last year. It's coming to around a year, but still the information is key, because a lot of in the public, they are always asking questions about how sure are you of this information. And we say simply that how can the Spanish government be so adamant in their decision if they don't have proof? It's the same system or the same method has just been moved from Spain to Morocco. We're talking about the ships almost and the same cargo. So when we get good info, we expose it, the sooner the better, and then the reaction by the unions and the grassroots movements and other people, it makes the pressure so hard on the authorities. And we are just asking, our simple demand is inspect. Because once you inspect and you tell us the content, it will be a clear violation of regulation, clear violation of resolutions, and that will push them to take the appropriate measure, to take the appropriate action. And so far, we have been met with deafening silence from the authorities, like nothing. So to just be completely clear, what worked is that we created more links between movements, associations, and now we are we are at the stage to approach dock workers more and to tell them that you have a good, how can I say, safety net. We have lawyers, we have associations of human rights that can actually protect once you make that decision, because it's not a simple decision to make. You are risking your own livelihood by putting your work at risk, and by doing so, we are trying to tell them you're doing the right thing, and they don't have any right to pressure you to work against moral values, to work against actually regulations, because Maersk are being so sneaky, trying, like Aisha explained, they're not shipping weapons, they're shipping military parts or parts of or wherever. At the same time, in their own charter, they are saying that they abide by the UN human rights values in their code of conduct. And if you are asking an employee to load a military equipment that will be used for genocide, that is complete infringement of that code of conduct. So this is where we are at. So we have clearly came a long way. Before we were just at the stage of telling people what's happening, but now we are at the stage of let's do something about it. And that something needs to be organized, needs to come at one time, coming strong, so that the pressure will be so hard that they cannot avoid it or say something else. So we are working now in this front and also in the legal front of things. So we are working to put the pressure on the ports authorities to tell them that you need to inspect. You are forced by law to inspect, because this is something that is unlawful going on in the ports, and we need to do something about it.
Thank you so much, Ismail. Sachin, I guess the question also goes for you. What have been the most effective strategies in targeting the weapons supply chain to Israel?
Great question. So I think, like Aisha talked about, recognizing that power comes in many different forms, and that there is synergy, there is relation between these different forms of power, whether it's trade unions or mass mobilizations or state policy or some combination of those. I think being creative and really following not just the expectation that something will go according to plan, but also planning for, if this succeeds, then we have to be prepared one step later to know how to respond when the state responds to us or when the system responds to us by suppressing us in whatever way. So that's just something to keep in mind, I think, in general. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that, like Aisha said, there is a chain reaction effect that takes place. When one jurisdiction declares an arms embargo, like Spain, when Spain actually turned away the Maersk ships, the 3 Maersk ships that Aisha mentioned, that act in and of itself motivated and propelled other states and other trade unions and social movements in states that were more sympathetic to the Zionist state to actually take things into their own hands, because they can point to this precedent that's set by Spain blocking these ships and push forward with that. An example I want to share that's related to this is from the No Harbor for Genocide campaign last July. We had discovered in the spring that all of the jet fuel that the U.S. sends to the Israeli occupation forces is refined by a single refinery called Valero, or owned by Valero in Corpus Christi, Texas. There are 2 ships that go back and forth, the Overseas Suncoast and the Overseas Santorini. Every 2 months, one of these ships is carrying enough jet fuel to power, I think, 12,000 F-35s, something like that. Which is just ridiculous to think about, and it's happening, constantly. And we started tracking the movements of these ships, and we saw that one ship was headed to dock in Algeciras, where they typically have been docking. And so we told our friends in Spain, and they were able to refuse port services to that ship. And then other groups in Morocco, in Gibraltar, in Italy, in Greece, in Turkey, in Cyprus, all over the Mediterranean, groups of people, trade unions, social movements, etc., took action into their own hands, and the ship at a certain point was not able to dock anywhere and just turned off its AIS tracker, so we couldn't see where it was anymore. That's them conceding that point to us. The issue that I think we run into is that these actions are incredibly effective in the moment, but when we live in a system where the normalization of genocide has gotten to such a point that it is like constantly happening, the gears of capital are constantly turning and killing people while they are turning. We live in a country that every single congressional district has at least one weapons manufacturer within it, not by coincidence, but so that Congress people have to vote for weapons funding, or else their constituents lose jobs. It's normalized and baked into our system that we will make weapons to kill people abroad in order to feed ourselves, which is crazy. That should not be how a world runs, especially the richest country in the world. I'm sorry, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And so I think this is where, again, I invoke Basel to say we have to destroy the idea of America in our heads, in our neighbors' heads, in our comrades' heads, in everybody's heads in this country. We have to work towards problematizing and getting away from the normalization of the violence of the military-industrial complex that is just baked into these supply chains. And we have to actually present an alternative that is appealing and meaningful to people. And this takes different forms depending on where you are. I think it takes a lot of social investigation to, in your local context, figure out what are the issues. In Corpus Christi, for example, Valero is one of 9 refineries in Corpus Christi, and they are currently building a desalination plant not for the water-scarce people of Corpus Christi, who are largely indigenized and racialized and very low income compared to the average. They're building desalination plants so that the refineries can continue making oil, while people are losing water for their consumption because there's a water scarcity. That's a point that we could agitate around. That's a point that people in Corpus Christi could actually build a campaign around to say, Valero is taking our water on stolen land to produce jet fuel that is sustaining a genocide abroad. I think that these kinds of things need to be called into question, and actually the questions need to not be so simple about like, is this right or wrong, but also asking the more nuanced questions of how do we change things? How can we learn from what has worked and what hasn't worked? How can we learn from the state's response to what we're doing to actually develop a strategy that is more robust, that can withstand the repression that is going to come our way if we are effective, and also that breaks this idea of American exceptionalism in our heads and gives us a chance at seeing a world tomorrow that is defined by equality and justice for all. And I think that that work is not so formulaic. It's not so easy to prescribe a specific list of tasks to do. But I think the more that we think critically about how things are happening, that is the subcontractors that are allowed to make screws and metal plates and whatever for the F-35, for the Hellfire missile, for 120mm tank shells, whatever it is, that these companies cannot operate as they are operating, making parts to these weapons that are killing Palestinians. We have to call into question the assumptions that we all live by and actually seriously interrogate what does it look like to build a better world, and how do we do it instead of just talking about it.
Thank you, Sachin. I think something that's coming up for me right now is the reminder that even taking a step back, a lot of everything we've been talking about was within the context of Palestine. But there's so many of these targets, these weapons manufacturers, that don't just impact us across the Palestinian movement. They impact the black and brown communities in which these weapons manufacturers exist. They have climate justice negative consequences all the time in these same exact communities. And so there are so many other movements of whom have also had these weapons manufacturers as targets. And so as I think about maximizing our opportunity in this moment, I also want us to think about the different ways in which these same exact targets show up across different social justice movements, and how important it is for us to capture that thought. And then something you said earlier, Sachin, is that it's not just about words, right? It's not. And it's even not just about the strategy. It's about words and strategy and action. It's about all of those things coupled into one another that allow us to have the wins and the successes that we have in mind, and the wins that we want to see happen. And I think, Aisha, you're going to talk about that in a minute. So I actually want to hand it off to you to talk about ways in which people can get plugged in. What are some of the ways in which people can get involved, especially knowing now we have all this brand new work that's coming out of Oakland? What more can people be doing?
Yeah, thank you, Iman. So first I want to say on an ideological level that it is time that we raise the ceiling of our demands. Point blank. It is absolutely time that we raise the ceiling of our demands. And we saw how effective that was with the Mask Off Maersk campaign. So I know what I'm presenting to you all today is a big ask, but actually, when we were documenting and publicizing all of the different ways that Maersk was complicit in the genocide, something that we also found was that Maersk was shipping to and from the settlements, which is illegal under international law. And because of the concentrated effort and pressure that they felt around arms embargo demands, recently they made a quiet public statement, and they posted this actually, they have one page on their website, just that basically refers to our campaign but doesn't name our campaign. And at the very bottom of the page, when we scrolled down, we saw that they actually put a statement out that says that they will no longer ship to and from the settlements. Y'all, that's the second largest shipping company in the world. That's one of the biggest BDS wins we have seen in a long time. Before this moment, that would have taken years, if not decades, to accomplish. So I just want to say that because they were so afraid of the legal liability for them to be facilitating genocide and supporting the settlement economy, we won that, right? So we can raise the ceiling of our demands and we can win big. Block the Bombs legislation is in Congress right now. You can bring back the demand for an arms embargo on the local level and you can win. You can win. With knowledge comes power. We have a lot of knowledge and we have a lot of power, y'all. And I think that it is time that each and every one of you who's interested in this campaign, please, please, please fill out the interest form at the PYM table, get plugged in, find me if you're seeing me around, find Sachin, find Iman. We will be continuing this movement forward in the same way that we saw ceasefire populate across the country on a grassroots level. We are gonna do that for an arms embargo. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for everything, Iman.
A big round of applause for these incredible organizers. Ismail, we send your love. We send you the love from this room. So, how many of you are going to take up action on an arms embargo campaign today? If every single one of you joins a campaign today, we can stop this genocide. Thank you, everyone.
Free, free. Free, free.
Palestine.
Free, free.
Palestine.
Give it up one more time for our panelists. Arms embargo now. Arms embargo now. Arms embargo now. Give it up one more time for our panelists. The call for an arms embargo is not symbolic. It is urgent and it is necessary. Like our panelists said, our task is to transform our outrage into organized power, and to amplify the demand of the people. No weapons for genocide. So we're going to transition into another break, a 30-minute break. We will reconvene in this room at 6:30 for two sessions that are going to happen at 6:30. One will be here, the documenting genocide, Gaza before and after October 2023. 2023 will be meeting in this room. And the workshop on cultural resistance will be in the Hussam Abu Safiya room. And then tomorrow morning we'll reconvene 9 a.m. in this room. Enjoy the sessions. Thank you, everyone.